In our last session we take a look at what are the very basics of vector. In this session I want to take a look at what are the very basics of pixels or raster objects in CorelDRAW. We're going to look at pixels. To get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring an image in, a photographic image. So I'll go to Advanced Tools, I'll go to my design base, I'm going to go to Marketing Tools, I'm going to come down here to Comps, and I'll go ahead and bring in, let's take a look at, I'll bring this particular comp in. So I'm going to double click and I'm going to select Open a New Document, and we're going to take a look at this model comp. I'm going to hit Control C, and I'm going to minimize and go back to my Corel training page and hit Control V and bring this in. This is actually one of our model comps, and we've got quite a few of them in the design base, and we found that working with clients, if we have actual live models and putting designs and graphics on these, we can create some really good marketing materials that really give the client a good preview of the design before they make a purchase or a buying decision. But if we zoom in here, we can see that what we're dealing with in here is pixels. You can see little squares of color, and these squares of color have properties associated with them. If we zoom out, we can see that what we've done with this particular graphic, we'll go ahead and ungroup all here, is we've taken the shading of the garment apart from the color, which is set up as monochrome bitmaps, but yet in the background is the full image set up as an RGB image. So here you've got the shading, which is semi-transparent, has some opacity to it, and here you've got, or transparency, and here you've got another monochrome set up as the background of the color, and then you've got an RGB behind that. So we're really doing some different things with raster here in Draw so that we can create photorealistic looking model comps to put our graphics on and create marketing materials and send them to our customers. Now let's take a look at this shading. The shading is a grayscale, and it has transparency. If I hold down Alt and click down, I've got a monochrome bitmap with an outline that's orange, and I can change that with a right click to a red, and my model will have a red t-shirt. With a right click to a blue, and my model will have a blue t-shirt. Now here I'm dealing with photorealistic design media in CorelDRAW, and what I'm dealing with is pixels, but pixels that are set up differently in Draw in different types of objects: grayscale, monochrome, and RGB. And what we want to be aware of is how these different objects work, even though they're raster in Draw, and what properties are associated with them. Here I've got a simple color chip to represent a pixel, set up as CMYK in CorelDRAW. Next to that I've got RGB, next to that I've got grayscale, and next to that I've got a monochrome. And we're going to, for just a minute, imagine that these are single pixels. Well, if I want to work with these, they work very differently in Draw. For instance, a monochrome bitmap, you'll notice down here in the status bar, has some color properties associated with it. Now here I've got the foreground color set up as a blue, but with a right click I can change that to a red. Now you'll notice when I click on the grayscale image, I can't do anything with that. No colors are going to change. The same with RGB, and the same with CMYK. Now where monochrome is concerned, I can work with that like vector to some degree. And we use a lot of monochrome in our design work and in our design base and things like that, because quite frankly there's a lot of looks and feels and shading and highlighting and textures and distress and grunge and flames and things and effects like that you really can't get very well with vector, but you can get them very well with monochrome and still have them be spot colors that you can color separate. We also do quite a bit of work with grayscale because we can use that as a single color. And we also use grayscale actually in our monochromes because monochromes support an 8-bit alpha channel that you can give this monochrome the illusion of having grayscale. It looks like it has grayscale, but really it's just an alpha channel. Now here with the RGB and the CMYK, we really don't work with those a lot because we can't convert those to spot colors effectively. We can't change colors with them, and we can't manage the colors in them effectively or as easily as we can monochrome. Of course, we can go to things like effects, adjust, and replace color, and then I could come over here and click on the blue, select that, click OK, and that'll change my CMYK to that orange. The same with the RGB. Now if I try to do that on a grayscale, because a grayscale doesn't have any color, it's not going to apply. So we want to be aware of what these different types of bitmaps are and how we can work with them, and actually how we can work with and manipulate the pixels in our images in CorelDRAW. Work a little bit differently with them than we do with vector objects, but we can still manipulate them quite effectively in CorelDRAW and of course in Corel Photo Paint. For instance, this CorelDRAW box, if I want to adjust the brightness and contrast intensity of it, I can come down here and adjust and click on that, bring my brightness up, and you'll see that my box gets brighter. I can bring my contrast down or my contrast up and start to radically adjust the pixels. Let's take a look at that zoomed in on just a few pixels. Right here we are on just a few pixels. We'll go to adjust brightness, contrast, and intensity, and we'll bring our brightness up, and we'll see how the pixels are changing. Each one of these squares is the pixels in the object. So we manipulate, edit, and work with pixels very differently than we manipulate, edit, and work with vector. We'll go ahead and hit cancel here, and we'll go back to draw. So that is the introduction to our bitmap or raster objects or our pixels. We'll go ahead and wrap here, and we'll continue in our next session.